Alright, what up folks? Lou here from Consciously Lou, and I'm trying to see if I can do this video in fast enough time without the camera cutting off and boring everybody to death. Alright, so what this video is going to be about is falling asleep consciously. Now if you've never done lucid dreaming or paid attention to your sleeping, how you falling asleep and how it feels and what you're seeing and experiencing, then you may not be able to relate with what I'm about to say, because this is for the observer. This is for the person who's tried lucid dreaming or astral projection and has become familiar with the hypnagogic phase and that feeling of the falling, the sinking and all that, and the flashes of light as you're falling asleep, these types of things. All right, because that's kind of and if you don't meditate and pay attention to your awareness and your attention and what you're doing, you might not be familiar with some of the phases that I'm going to talk about. Because these phases, I'm pretty sure they got some technical names or whatever, or maybe not, but they're specific to me. But when I speak to my girlfriend, she understands what I'm talking about because she experiences those same phases. Most people do. So what I'm going to say should shed some light on that because it's really helped her. Alright, so if you're interested in lucid dreaming and astral projection, this is going to help. But I use this to fall asleep consciously, and what it does is it makes it also, if I'm not able to fall asleep consciously, it makes my dreams much more vivid and gives me more memory. And when I remember what's going on in my dreams, I can tell I'm this close from being lucid. Like, that's how aware in the dream I am. I'm not necessarily, I'm still under the influence of the dream, but I have a greater awareness and consciousness. Is interesting, but I'm not necessarily lucid. But I know something. That's the thing you could tell. So that is translating into my dream. So let me try. I'm going to put it in maybe a complicated way, then I'll try to break it down. So what happens is when you lay down and you close your eyes, there is a time period of your chemical state is starting to change, and you can just let that happen, and you'll feel it once it starts to happen. It feels like it's kind of like I'm falling asleep, not the oh I just doze. It's kind of like your eyes are getting heavier, your body's getting relaxed. That's the chemicals kicking in, making that happen, and you usually feel it around here in the eyes because the eyes kind of go into a daze. So if you've ever been just sitting there looking, and next thing you know you're not looking at what's up there, you're just in a daze, kind of like in a daydream. You're not looking at anything, but it looks like you're staring. That same thing happens when you close your eyes, and once you enter that phase, that daze, that's a trance state. And in that trance state, that's chemicals have brought you into that state. And you want to try to maintain that by entering into the trance state as much as you can, because what's going to happen is, now that you know that that's the trance state, when that happens, you're going to become aware that you're in the trance state, and it's going to bring you out of the trance state. At least you're going to feel like it. But if you were upset, chemicals would be in your body, and somebody could say something to you that makes you laugh, but you're still going to go back to being upset. Those chemicals are still in your body. You know what I mean? It's like the exact same thing. Though you may dip your head out the pool, you're still in the pool if you don't get out the pool. So if you maintain that awareness, analytical state where you're talking about everything that's happening in your head, all this mind chatter and how it's working, is it working right? What am I supposed to be doing? All these different types of things. If you keep in that state, your chemicals are going to change. So what happens is when you become aware that you're in the trance state, simply relax and go back into the trance state for as long as you can. The trance state, once again, is basically how it is when you're daydreaming. When you're sitting there bored and you're just looking, and you were looking focused, and then all of a sudden everything kind of blurs out and you're not looking at what's out here anymore. You're actually in here thinking, and you're not using your eyes at that time. You're looking with a different eye at your thoughts and all that's going on in your mind. The exact same state. When your eyes are closed, you just go into the trance state just like that. You'll feel the chemicals as if they're coming down on you like that, relaxing you. You'll be like, whoa, that's relaxing. And then when you feel it, you'll become aware of it, and you'll feel like you came out of it. And then you just relax your eyes, stare until you get back into that gaze again. and then you sit in the gaze again, and the more you do it, the more chemical you have. And you'll notice as you do that, the hypnagogia starts in the front here, the red and the yellows and the greens and all that stuff moving and blending. And what you have to understand about that is the more chemical you have, the more you'll see of that. And what you'll see is when you look at it, it starts to dissipate. You know, a lot of the times when you start to pay attention to it, it starts to dissipate until you have enough chemicals, you know, from being in the trance state, and then you'll start to be able to, it'll become more stable because you worked in the chemicals, you know what I mean? And that's what the chemicals are there for, to make that state stable. So the more you go into the trance state, the more stable it becomes. The more you go into the trance state, the more stable it becomes, usually until you fall asleep. That's that period of, I wasn't paying attention to anything, I just fell asleep. That's the same thing as, I was just sitting here, I don't even know what I was thinking about, I was in a daze. And somebody waves their hand in front of your face and is like, what's going on? It's like, oh, must have been daydreaming. It's the exact same thing. You slip into this state, that's kind of like the in-between phase, and you're not really thinking or hearing or recording anything that's going on at the time, and then you slip into the dream. But you can be aware during that time if you understand how you shift your consciousness so that it stays, your awareness stays anchored, it stays aware, I guess you could say. It's like you're keeping your eyes open while you go into the subconscious. So how that happens is when the hypnagogic imagery starts, you have to understand what that is for. That hypnagogic imagery is it's just like it's very similar to it's very similar to ink blots from a psychiatrist or whoever would show them. So they say, what does this remind you of? And when you look at it, your subconscious instantly is going to use it to like round to the nearest common denominator or whatever is in you. So it's like, oh, that looks like a butterfly based on your experiences and the images in you. That's what your subconscious mind is going to do. You know what I mean? So it's the exact same. So let me give you another example in case you don't understand what I mean. Let's say you look at a name that you can't pronounce. And for example, my name is Fakankun. It's F-A-K-N-K-U-N. When people see my name, they instantly think Franklin. They say Farrakhan. My name ain't spelled like any of that. It just starts with the F, ends with an N. That's all they see, and they fill in, their subconscious mind fills in the blank with something they're familiar with because they have no experience with this name. You see what I mean? So that's the exact same thing your subconscious mind is going to do with the hypnagogic imagery. It's moving around, creating shapes and forms, and your subconscious mind is going to create pictures out of this imagery. So what you have to do is, most people get stuck because they look at the imagery. And that's going to kind of keep you awake in a sense. It's not going to allow you to see what's actually going on because it's not. The hypnagogic imagery is like fog. And when you turn on your fog lights or your headlights, it kind of creates a screen on the outside of the fog. That's what most people are doing when they're trying to look at the hypnagogic imagery. They're looking at it and it creates a screen because they see the workings of the paint. It's like oil canvas and it's a bunch of paint just swirling around. That's what they're looking at. So they see that and they can't see what's actually happening. You have to look through the fog in a gaze. So you have to do the daydream gaze and direct your, because it's not your eyes necessarily that you're looking at. You're looking with your attention. And that's the best way I can explain it. I'm sorry. It's the same way it's like when somebody's telling you something and you don't look at them, you listen at them. It's like the same exact thing. You know what I mean? Somebody's telling you something, it's like, can you say it again? And you didn't hear him. It's like you lean to them and you're no longer using your eyes, you're using your ears. And you're using your attention towards them to pay specific attention to what they're saying so that you actually hear it, because you don't want any other stimulus. That's a natural occurrence that you're doing. You don't even know you're shutting off other stimulus to make this heightened, but that's what you're doing. And it's the exact same thing. When you're seeing the hypnagogic imagery, Go into a like you're trying to use your peripheral vision and you see everything at once, as opposed to focusing your 2,000 bits of consciousness on the hypnagogic imagery creating a screen. You look through the haze and then you just let your subconscious mind do what it does. It's going to create images, it's going to create a landscape out of the imagery once you look through it. Once you look through it and have the gaze and everything is open, it's going to create an image out of that, a landscape out of that. Now I don't know how much battery life I got, so I'm just creating a cutoff point right here. So if it cuts off, I can just pick up from where I was just at. But it creates a imagery. It's going to create a landscape that you'll see forming in the distance. And it's kind of like when you look at the sun and then you close your eyes and you can still see that sunspot. It's going to the landscape begins looking like that. And it's like a negative it's like that negative film. You're seeing the contrast of the light and darkness, and that's what the subconscious mind is going to shape things out of, the darkness and the contrast of the light. And it's going to use your subconscious mind is going to use recognition and just basically create something based out of what it can recognize out of that. But that's also going to, what it's creating out of what it can recognize. What's interesting about that, it's you. It's drawing from within you, and it's creating a scenery, because dreams are scenes of our subconscious. So what you're starting to see form there is your subconscious speaking to you in atmospheric words, you know what I mean? And it's speaking to you in the form of an environment and a picture. So you're starting to see this stuff, and it's really crazy. So what happens is, if you can maintain your gaze and your attention into your gaze to see what this image is starting to form, because this happens whether you're paying attention or not. That's what you got to realize. But your awareness allows you to see it unfold. Alright, so you pay attention to that and you start to see the images, and you might start to see trees, or you might start to see mountains, or it might be like a mountain scene with a lake starting to form, or you might be in a car or something like that. Your subconscious mind is going to create the scene, and usually the scene is going to seem like it's out here in like a two-dimensional image out here, and you're going to be looking at it, and it's going to go away, and it's going to, and now it's the same thing like if you look at the sun. Look at the sun, close your eyes, you can see it there, you can not pay attention to it, and then you can go back to the colored mark or whatever that was left there, and you can pull the picture back. It's the same way with the dream. When you're looking through the hypnagogic imagery and the mountain is forming, and then it's like, oh snap, I see the mountain, and your awareness comes into it, and then the mountain goes away. It's going to leave that residue in the hypnagogic imagery. You can put your attention back on that imagery and pull the mountain scene back. That's what I started to do. And if you do that, and it'll go right back, your subconscious will go right back into work and creating the scene and fleshing it out more. And you'll notice like your consciousness is kind of just like floating along the two-dimensional scene as it's unfolding, and you'll keep losing it and bringing it back. As the chemicals get stronger and stronger, you'll be losing it and bringing it back, and losing it and bringing it back, and losing it and bringing it back. And then next thing you'll know, you'll feel it'll be as if the lights came on. Like when this is happening, you're noticing light. And this is the crazy thing, because it's light coming from where? From within. But you'll notice like it's still like the hypnagogic, because the hypnagogic imagery is like dark and dark light. But you'll notice the lights will come on like boom. And once that happens, you'll start to notice that your senses are starting to correlate with the imagery as opposed to out here. You'll start to hear voices of people talking. You'll start to smell things. The things that you see will start to create a reaction in you. You know what I mean? And that's when you know you're getting feedback from within that place that you're at now. And then what happens is that takes over and becomes three-dimensional, no longer out here, but you step into the realm, that's when the chemicals have become strong enough for you to be able to literally be aware and analytical. Because that's the thing, usually once we begin to analyze what's happening, it crashes the experience. But I just showed you how to continue to re-enter. When you gaze, you analyze the gaze, stop analyzing, re-enter the gaze. Chemicals increase. When you're looking at the hypnagogic imagery and the images are starting to take form, and you analyze and say, oh, that's a mountain, and it goes away, re-engage with the residue of the mountain that's left in the hypnagogic imagery and pull it back and continue to do that over and over and over. Eventually it becomes a world. And in the next video, I'll talk about that again and tell you what happened in my experience when I did that, you know what I mean? Because I don't want this to cut off since this was a good video. Thank you guys for watching. Hope it made sense. If it didn't make sense, leave comments below and I'll answer them as best as I can. I'll make more videos to kind of piggyback on this stuff. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Hope you give it a shot.